Thanks for staying tuned. This is still in the game. It's now time to turn our attention to the round leather game of football, and this has to do with the African Cup of Nations qualifiers. 2 slots were left. We had 22 teams having booked their places at the Mundial, and you had just 2 left with 3 teams right there in the running. Remember, the group had 3 teams following the disqualification of Kenya. So it was Cameroon on 4 points. You had Burundi on 4 points and Namibia on 5 points. All 3 teams with a chance to progress. But it was the Cameroonians, the Indomitable Lions, the 2017 champions, who booked their place into the next round, courtesy of a 3-0 win over Burundi. And as a result of that, you had Namibia, who were table toppers just before the clash, finishing second to also book their place into the next round. Now, joining me to discuss this is the sports journalist from Cameroon, Jemea Teka Ndumbe, who joins me from BL Cameroon. Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, good morning, Samson, and good morning to the viewers of News Central.
Thank you so much. Let's start with the atmosphere. We know quite well that football is not just a game of 90 minutes in terms of what's on the field. There's also, we have the off-field activities, the atmosphere leading to the game itself, and, how tense it may seem, as it were, and even after the match, the atmosphere as well, jubilation on the street and all of that. So, off the bat, what was the atmosphere like in Cameroon prior to the match itself, prior to kickoff? What was the expectations of the fans, especially with the return of Onana?
Yeah, public opinion, normally the fans were actually excited. The pressure was on for the players. And so before the players had to travel, because they had a 1 week training, one week camping with Rigoberto Bahanak, we had a shorter period, unlike Burundi, that had a much more longer campaign. But however, the atmosphere of the fans, especially when they took the game to Garoua, it was due to relief pressure from the fans in Douala and Yaoundé, because had it been they took the match to Douala and Yaoundé, Douala or Yaoundé, it should have been much more, the pressure would have been more than in Garoua. So Garoua became the suitable venue for this particular game. And going into Garoua, the players, they had a positive atmosphere from our colleagues on the ground who told us how the players are having some good atmosphere in terms of the reception they received out there in Garoua, the fans cheering them up and giving them all the necessary support. And even all over the country, it was right here in my hometown, Boya, where we also give them their own support. We were glued to our TV sets yesterday, and also the build-up. Also, we had time to have build-ups in our various media platforms to see how the game was going to favor Cameroon in terms of output on the pitch. So the fans actually gave their support, and even the coming of Andre Onana, which was a government kind of pressure on the technical bench of the national football of Cameroon to bring in Andre Onana. You understand that the fans were so happy to have seen their best goalkeeper back in the Lions Den after close to 9 months out due to his wranglings with the technical bench. So the fans normally, they knew that despite the fact that our backs were pushed on the wall, but they still had the confidence that in Garoua we're going to produce the result.
About Onana, since you've mentioned him already, we know the fans were expecting him to make a return, and the return finally came. The match itself was tense, really. You could tell that Cameroon were a bit nervous at the start. Onana pulling off 5 saves within 35 minutes of the match itself, just within the first half. You had Onana coming up clutch, as it were, to keep Cameroon in the match. But this goal by Bryan Mbuemo did, settle nerves, as it were. What do you make of the performance of Cameroon on the night?
Yeah, the performance, normally I will say it is 60. Yes, the result is quite applaudable. For the first time, we scored 3 goals since we 3 goals in a single competitive match since we scored that against Mozambique during the World Cup qualifiers of the 2022 World Cup. So that's the last time we scored more than 2 goals in a single game. So it was really a good sign that the attackers knew what they had to do. When we started the game normally on a tense note, the Burundians were coming into that game. They knew quite fully well that they needed a win to also qualify because they had smelt qualification. Having beaten Namibia and taking 4 points from Namibia, it was really a confidence booster for them. And Coach Etienne of Burundi, he had put his players under camping for close to 3 months. And so it tells you how confident they were, reasons why they had much of the chances in the first half when it comes to that particular game. But however, there was one thing which we had analysts and pundits in Cameroon had outlined about Rigobert Song Bahanak. In his playing days, he was good with his fighting spirit. He knew how to fight. He was a fighter during his playing days. Reasons why he had the captaincy during his playing days. He was one of the most successful captains after Abega Teofil, and he had that fighting spirit in his teammates. So we were thinking that since he had that fighting spirit, he should be able to pass on that fighting spirit to those young lads of yesterday. And the first half didn't prove the fighting spirit. I think the second half, when they went for the break, that is when now he had to come in to make the boys understand the stakes of the game, the pressure, the fans. Almost 30,000, the Roumde Adjia Stadium was filled to capacity. 30,000 fans yesterday in the stadium with that pressure, and he had to inculcate those words to those guys. And in the second half, we saw a different Cameroon team that went all out and attack, and the goods were provided, and we took our chances. And so I think it was really a fighting spirit that was a key indicator of that particular game yesterday. And I think Rigobert Song Bahanak, with his fighting spirit in his playing days, actually had to pass on this particular fighting spirit to these young guys.
Let's look at the task ahead now, because that match is done and dusted. For all of the excitement and still in qualification, there's still so much to look forward to in terms of the Cameroonian squad. You talked about the performance being 60%. In other words, the areas the team needs to improve on. I said earlier that within 35 minutes of the match against a team like Burundi, Onana making 5 saves is ridiculous, to say the very least. What will happen if it was a top side like Senegal or Algeria or Egypt? Are you saying they will make 10 saves in 35 minutes? So what areas do you expect Cameroon to improve on just ahead of the continental showcase in January? It's just a few months away. What areas defensively, in terms of the midfield, even in terms of the attack? Yes, Vincent Aboubakar, the captain, is still scoring goals, but are you looking at options, in terms of replacements, so that Cameroon go into the tournament as a formidable force?
Well, I think we had a problem of the right back. The right back wasn't really impressive yesterday. Alongside the midfield, the holding midfield, the person who takes the ball from the defense to the attack, was really absent yesterday in the first half. I think that area needs to be looked upon because because if you look at it yesterday, Olivier Miche and Zambo was to play the box-to-box kind of a midfielder, while Miche was to play like the sitting midfielder. But you see that Miche was not actually visible for majority of the game, and so Zambo had to overwork himself. So I think the coach must have seen that particular error. And yes, we had Ungwet on the bench, but he was brought in. But I think going into our next games, like the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, I think the coach needs to understand that the midfield, there must be a gelling between the midfield, defense, and attack, where the midfield takes from the defense and fits the attack. That is why you saw that Aboubakar was staffed throughout the first 45 minutes. He couldn't get the balls alongside Chifumotin. The balls couldn't move from the midfield to the attack. And so that perfect acceleration wasn't there. And so Cameroon used to be a team that plays from the wings, plays the long balls. And so we lacked those crosses, those set pieces from the wingers. I'm talking of Nhotolo and Olivier Mbaiso. So I think those areas, the wings, crosses alongside the midfield, I think Rigobert Song Bahanak needs to work on those areas going into our next qualifying games. I'm talking of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers, which we are to play teams like Cape Verde, Angola. Those are strong nations. And so even at the level of the Afcon. And then Rigobert Song Bahanak needs to find a tactical play. You need to get a style of play which suits the Cameroonian system. that system has been missing since Roumde Adjia took over. Yes, under Conceição, we played a kind of long ball syndrome where the wingers were the ones playing the much more deadly balls, and Aboubakar could score because he was good at airborne duels, and so he would get the goals. And we had players then, Fry Collins, who was absent. We had Duotolo, who was also giving those crosses, and Moving Gamale. Then now, Roumde Adjia needs to review those previous play styles and see what suits his system, and before the Afcon, because the Afcon now is close to 2 months or 3 months or so to the start of the Afcon. So you need to get that play style and then see how you can amend the midfield alongside the wings. Then I think a perfect Cameroon team might be fearful when it comes to the Afcon proper in January.
Leave it at that, and hope that all of these suggestions you've made will be taken note of by those in administration of Cameroonian football, especially in the technical crew, and you would have those changes implemented so that a more formidable Cameroonian side will go into the African Cup of Nations as one of the title favorites. Jemea, thank you so much for your time on the show this morning.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure.